Just wanted to let you know who we'll be hearing from today. So we're really excited to welcome Dr. Jess Reynolds, who is a Jane ambassador, a Jane customer, and also founder of AIM, which is some online education and courses, which is a really incredible. And he's been actually in one of our webinars before. You've probably, hopefully, seen that webinar as well. Really excited to have him here today. He's been early testing some of our AI features, so we're excited to hear from him. We've got Fiona Finn, who is our director of product marketing. And we've got Raj Paul, who is our Senior Development Manager for JaneX, the team behind any of our AI features. So with that, we are 3 minutes in. We've got a lot of information to share with you today. So I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to our panelists, but I will be back later to help facilitate some Q&A throughout the session. There you are, Fiona. Take it away.
Awesome. That looking good? Perfect. Okay, thanks so much for joining us all today. We have a jam-packed agenda, as I mentioned. So excited to jump into things and chat a little bit about what we've been working on at Jane, have some conversations with Jess as well. So we're going to break this conversation into two parts. Number one, we're going to look at some trends we've been seeing in our community and in our clinics, have a bit of a conversation and answer some questions. And then we're going to move on to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look at our vision at how we're going to be using AI, a few things that we've been working on, give you a really exciting demo, and then, of course, answer more questions if you have any. So to kick things off, I would love to launch a quick poll and ask you, could you rate your knowledge of where you think you're at right now with your skill set when it comes to AI? I know there's a huge variety in how we judge ourselves, in how we think others are, and the definition of beginner to expert and advanced is so different, but would love to know where you feel you're at so we can kind of cater any of this content to your needs as well. Awesome. So it looks like we've got a great mix of folks, a lot of beginners, a lot moderate. We all have to start somewhere. But yeah, that's super, super awesome. I'm going to end the poll and jump into talking about some trends that we've started to see. So in the last year, I think we've all experienced a ton of change in our clinics, in our community, since OpenAI has launched ChatGPT. This technology has been made more readily available to, it seems, probably like everyone and their dog. And I think as a result, two things kind of have happened. There's almost this new pressure kind of appearing to be a bit more efficient or feel a bit more efficient. And the second change I think we can admit has happened is that every second technology that we already use, from our phones to our email platforms, our fitness apps, even our music apps, all seem to have a nugget of AI layered in. And so with this big, huge tidal wave of change with new technology, new language, new buzzwords, I think it's this really interesting mixture of both excitement that we have all these new opportunities and efficiencies to tap into, but obviously a little bit of nervousness as well. How do I get started? What should I be cautious of? And I want to kick things off by saying that's definitely a mix of sentiment that we've observed in our communities, in our clinics as well. So we're not alone in this regard. One really interesting thing that I've personally have observed is that I love talking to customers. I love hearing your stories. I love getting in the weeds of how your day is going, how you're using new technology. But then I also love seeing these stories play out in data. And so I've been on a mission the last while to understand how clinics are working, feeling, and thinking about AI. And this is a really interesting emotional evolution that I would love to share with you that hopefully you find interesting and maybe a bit inspiring or exciting. So way back in January, when we all kind of had fresh eyes, fresh start to the year, I wanted to check in to see how folks were thinking about AI as they embarked on a new year. And there was a really consistent breakdown of thoughts and feelings, with a third of folks feeling excited, a third feeling indifferent, and a third feeling a little nervous. Fast forward to literally yesterday is when I relooked at this data, which is a pretty large data set from our community. And it's really exciting to see this shift in sentiment where people are twice as likely now to be excited and half as nervous and half as cautious. And so I think this is really, really interesting because this signals how far we've come so quickly in embracing new technology and embracing change and really leaning into this for the sake of our clinics, our patients, and even ourselves and our own time. So I hope this kind of gives some folks who may still be feeling a little nervous or cautious a bit of that excitement and inspiration that everyone is really starting to lean in. And I don't think there's as much to be nervous about as we may feel or think. And some of my more of my discovery sent me down another path. What tools are practitioners, clinicians, and folks in our community using? I know Jess is going to tap into this a little bit more and share some of his personal experiences, but there's a ton of smart cookies out there in our community, a ton of creative folks, and you're using all these new tools in really interesting, creative ways. Some of the most popular tools I kind of cherry picked here, and they range from freemium solutions to very complex platforms. Folks are using AI for simple use cases like jump-starting that newsletter that when you're looking for some inspiration, all the way up to rewiring how we're thinking about doing our entire charting flow. So much variety between simple things to get a little help in and then really advanced ways to just create efficiencies in your day. And I personally love a good trend. And part of my job is to identify trends that we see in clinics, take these trends, share them with the product team, and then we kind of work together to figure out what should we be building for customers like yourself. And as we've kind of looked at our communities, I've kind of seen two trends appear. First of all, it's super clear that folks are looking for help with very repetitive tasks, tasks that don't reflect the unique elements of the care that you can provide in your day to day, and things that you just want a little bit more of a kickstart and help with. So things like writing emails, helping with client intake or support, maybe your snappier note taking, managing your to-do list better, even summarizing thoughts and findings. These are all things that there's definitely demand for a little bit more support in. The second kind of trend is kind of definitely still forming in clinics, and if I'm being honest, probably in my mind a little bit as well. But what we're seeing are some super interesting business efficiencies kind of pop up here. So those are things that maybe not might not be so obvious that we could get a little bit more help with. And that goes into getting better business insights, maybe helping with some better, more accurate billing support, and even starting to think around the corner and joining together the dots of care and next steps in great care. And so, with these emerging trends and the increasing level of confidence around AI in the community, my kind of big takeaway right now of where we're at in our AI journey is that I think AI is really improving practitioner experiences, but not replacing clinical expertise. And I think that's really, really important. One thing that I think we're observing is that those who are using AI are finding ways to balance their time better between things they didn't go to school for, and and then having more time for patient care as an outcome. So with that, I'm gonna pause and sharing my screen for a sec and gonna kick it over to Jess and Destin for a little bit of a Q&A.
So we wanted to chat with Jess. As I mentioned, he's been using AI in his clinic and using some of Jane's features as well. And so I think what we first wanted to ask is, what are some of your favorite new use cases for AI in using AI in your clinic?
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to be chatting with everybody about this. Yeah, I've been involved in the AI world for about 2 years now, so pretty much on the cutting edge of it. And clinically speaking, I think, well, the most exciting use case has been voice to chart, which is the beta feature that Jane is working on. And that has been an absolute genuine game changer. We could dig into that in a little bit more detail later on, I'm sure, but I also wanted to cover some of the other maybe less likely use cases that I use AI for. Perhaps the most common that I'm using AI for these days is research. So I'm a clinical practitioner, doctor of Chinese medicine, and I spend a lot of my time looking for new research. I go through new studies, anything from special tests to herbal formulas. And for any of you who have read through studies, they take a long time to read through, a long time to actually understand them. So perhaps the most exciting use case is this thing called Notebook LM. Now, I saw in the poll there were quite a large number of people in that sort of beginner to novice area. So if it's okay, I'm just going to very briefly share my screen to just show you how I would use this tool. Does that sound good? All right. So this is over here. This is Notebook LM, and it's by Google. And the reason I like it is because you could just import a study. And I was recently doing a bit of research on specificity and sensitivity of special tests. And as I'm sure some of you know, understanding sensitivity and specificity, it could be a bit of a nightmare. So with this tool, Google LM, you can import a document, and then you could just hit this button over here, and it literally turns it into a podcast. But what essentially happens is you could put in a study of any sort, and then you hit one button, and it turns it into a podcast of two people talking back and forth in very conversational tones. So for myself, when I'm going through all these new findings and new research, I'll just make a little podcast list of AI-generated podcasts, and it makes it 1,000 times easier for me to understand what's actually going on in these studies. In addition, it gives you a nice little summary as well. So that's one of the big use cases. And the second, on that same note, when it comes to research, is there's another tool that I use almost every single day, and it's called Perplexity. Perplexity is a little bit like Google, but way better. So what Perplexity does is it uses AI similar to like ChatGPT, so you can have a conversation, but you type in your search parameters, and it would give you a whole bunch of reference studies. So instead of just giving you websites, it gives you studies. And then you can read through the studies, and then you can ask Perplexity questions about the findings that it came together with. So again, when it comes to understanding new research, trends, things that are happening, those are probably my two favorite tools. And again, I want to talk more about the voice to chart, but I think we'll get into that in a little bit.
I wanted to open that question up to the chat as well. If anyone on today's webinar is using any sort of AI tools in your practice, we'd love to see. So if you want to pop that into the chat while I ask the next question, that would be incredible to see. And so I think you addressed it when you started talking, Dr. Jess, but we saw a lot of people are new, they're unsure about AI. So is there one simple thing that you think every clinic should maybe start doing today that could make a difference or help them start getting a bit more comfortable with AI maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing would be try it, because there is a lot of resistance for a number of different reasons, and you know, I think some of that resistance is well founded, right? Because we're still in the early phases, and really, who knows where things are going to be going. But nevertheless, the amount of time, thought, and energy and effort that goes into safety and ethics within the AI world is staggering. So my biggest suggestion would be try it. Pick one of the tools, the common ones, like Claude is basically a chat that you can have, or there's another one called Character AI. And when you try these things out, genuinely pretend you're just having a conversation with a person and ask a question. I think the best place to start for seeing the power is brainstorming. Maybe you're working through a problem, genuinely, be it an interpersonal problem of how to communicate with your partner or a business development problem. Just ask the chat like you would a friend and just see what happens with an open mind, and know that there's a lot of safety mechanisms in play there. So I think that'd be the best place to start.
I love that. A couple people in the chat were saying they're using AI for social media, which I think is a really like great place to start as well, like sort of low risk and easy to try. Someone mentioned Canva and another platform as well. And so I feel like if you're unsure, that's a great place to sort of like start dipping your toes in. Also very helpful if you don't feel like you have the time to be creating social content all the time. That's a really nice win-win for you there. And then, so what's perhaps something that clinics would be surprised that is AI that they might already do and is not AI that they already do? So maybe where they might be using AI that they're not quite sure, not aware of it yet?
Yeah. Well, if you have Spotify, you're using AI. If you have a smartwatch or an Aura Ring or any type of wearable, you're using AI. If you use a search engine. So an interesting thing is in the last 2 years, AI has really taken center stage because of things like ChatGPT, what are called large language models. But that being said, AI has been so thoroughly and deeply integrated into our technology and devices for a long time. That's many of the things that we take for granted. Even Siri is a basic AI. They're just kind of normal. So my guess would be pretty much everybody is interacting with AI in their day-to-day life in some way or another. It just might not be in the same capacity as, say, ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm just seeing the list of what people are sharing too. Like there's so many
Mhm.
out there that you're not aware of. So it's always growing and evolving. But yeah, basic things like Fitbits and Apple Watches, and there's that element of AI in those as well. So what are some of the most common challenges you're seeing with new clinics trying to integrate AI into how they're working?
Yeah. I think the two would be one, where to start, like what to do. How do you actually incorporate this into clinical life and practice? So that big question of, okay, this is great. I'm on board. AI sounds good. What do I actually do with it, and how can it actually help me? And then the next would be security and privacy. There's a lot of people being concerned about, if I'm putting in my patient's information, isn't that, compromising HIPAA compliance or something like that? Which again, definitely a smart way to think, but there are 100% ways to stay within HIPAA and PIPEDA compliance and still use AI. So again, those two challenges, one would be privacy, security, and HIPAA and PIPEDA compliance. And the next would be just this overwhelm of where do I even begin?
And I love the recommendation to just start small. And then I think if someone is wanting to know more about the compliance, is it sort of each tool, digging into how each tool works? How would they find that out?
Yeah. Yeah, so digging into what each tool individually is going to have for privacy, it can be a bit of a treasure hunt. So what I typically recommend is if you're not putting any personal information, the typical stuff, first name, last name, birth date, obviously social insurance number, if you're not putting any personal information, then there's not much to worry about. So I'm not going to get too nerdy, and I know Raj is in here as well, and he could probably get way more detailed into the specifics, but the information is quite encrypted and it is kept safe for the big companies. Now, if you use a lot of the apps that are out there that say AI integrated, they almost all funnel through these big companies. And they've got a lot of privacy and security settings baked in. That being said, I still always suggest don't put any personal information in there. If you wouldn't post it on, no, even if you would post it on Facebook, don't post it in there because figuring out specifics can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice. Okay, and then the last question is, what's one thing that has surprised you about seeing AI enter into clinical practices and life that you'd like people to know?
Yeah. Yeah, so when I first started using the voice to chart feature, I was really excited, right? Because being involved in the AI world, I'm like, wow, this is great. I get to see how it's used within clinical practice. But the thing that surprised me the most was how much better care I actually ended up giving to my clients. I'm sure we can all relate to this. And this is so I do run a continuing education company, and the number of people who ask for a course on taking proper SOAP notes and how to do proper inquiry, it's staggering. And what I found is when I started using the voice to chart, I didn't have to think about, remember, make a note of that, definitely chart this down. Instead of being like, I don't know, 75% with my client, 25% in my make sure to remember to take a note of this, I was 100% with my client, which was amazing. Because then once I got out of the inquiry session and did all of my usual prep, the notes were already done for me and I just reviewed them. And there were even a few points where I'm like, right, I missed that. So it allowed me to be fully, and it still does allow me to be way more present for my patients and clients. It actually helps me pick up things that I would have otherwise missed. So I could talk on and on and on about that, but truly the amount of more time, energy, and focus I can give to my patients is staggering.
Well, I love that. And I think you have done such a good job of getting everyone probably hyped and excited to learn a bit more about what we came here to talk about today, which is our voice to chart feature. So, with that, I'm going to pass it back to Fiona and Raj to talk a little bit more about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jess. I actually learned a ton about some more ways to use some tools and gonna try some research tooling as well after this. So thank you. Sweet. So we're going to kind of give you a bit of an overview as to what Jane's vision for the future with AI is, and then we're going to get Raj to take it home with a demo of Voice to Chart, which we of course are super excited to share with you. So we're going to kick things off first by talking about our responsible vision for the future. And we've had so many questions about our plans, about certain features, but what we want to really do is make sure that we're building community confidence in how we use AI. Jess spoke a lot about security and peace of mind, and I saw a ton of questions in the chat around that as well. So that really is one of our top level mandates, to both help innovate, give you back patient time, but also do that in a really responsible, mindful way. And there's kind of two key ways we believe we can really bring this to fruition for you. So we've crafted a set of AI principles that are going to be kind of like guiding principles that help us make decisions in a very practical, ethical, and responsible way. So some examples of our principles are ensuring that when we have an AI feature, an account owner will always opt into it. We will never do that on your behalf. We want to always make sure that your data is yours and yours only. We will not be using your data to train any models. We're always going to be crystal clear when a feature is powered by AI, so you have that transparency and that agency. Any recommendations that come as an outcome of Jane AI is going to be merely a suggestion that you can edit, you can reject it, you can take it or leave it as you want. We are always going to be clear on our privacy standards. As Jess mentioned, sometimes you really have to go digging to understand, is something compliant? What are the limitations of compliance? We're always going to make that crystal clear for you so that you can make the best decision on your behalf. And obviously, as new technology evolves, as best practices evolve, we are going to evolve our principles as well. And the second side of the coin here is prioritizing clinic safety. So we always want to protect your data. We always want to prioritize the level of trust that you have with us and that we can maintain with your patients. And with that in mind, we're always going to ensure that clinic data and processing is always done in the same geography as your clinic is located. So these are just our jumping off points from building responsible AI, and we hope that gives you a good bit of peace of mind. I'm happy to share more about our AI principles and how we're using them as well after this. So the second piece of our vision is that we're not interested in just building a checklist of features. We really want you to picture how Jane can really run your practice. And we've spent the last few months figuring out how to use new types of LLMs, figuring out what help clinics need most with, and of course, evaluating all those other tools that are out there in the market for some inspiration as well. And while we know that we could kind of copy and paste a lot of things that I've done before, we're really just taking these as a jumping off point and seeing how we can kind of tie things together and actually build workflows and not just features in a really Jane way. So we're thinking whenever we get a feature request from a customer, we examine it, we take it on board, and then we're starting to use all these feature requests as more of a compass and not a map. So we want to think of the outcomes that Jane can help you with, not just the feature itself. And so I would love if you could imagine inputting data once into Jane and then thinking about that entire workflow and what you would like us to do with it. So this is really how we're thinking about the future of AI in Jane. Like I said, not just features, we're thinking about workflows, how to do this responsibly, and how to do it all in a really Jane way. One thing you might notice starting to pop up as well as we explore AI is this concept of experimental features. So I want to take a beat to explain to you what that means so that you're feeling good about it. So if you happen to start to notice experimental features popping up in Jane, this is a feature that we're testing out. It's likely very new. It could be very early days, or it could be a late stage beta. It's going to vary. But this means that the value, the features, the availability are very likely to evolve and change. We may even go back to the drawing board with this feature, but everything is fully secure to use with real patient data. So I want to give you peace of mind with that. But as Jess said, the hardest part is jumping in and getting started. So we hope this will be a helpful jumping off point for you. And finally, the third piece of our vision, as we said, is that Jane wants to give you more time to do what you love and take a bit more work off your plate. I've got some really, really amazing feedback from some of our other beta testers for Voice to Chart. And one of the key themes was, I'm so shocked that I'm not jumping between my computer and my patient as I'm in the middle of a session. I'm really loving that my charting happens at work and not at nighttime. I'm really excited that that eye contact that I can provide my client or my patient with is happening in that session more and more. So we're really, really excited to be able to deliver that to you. And while I said we're not building features, we do still listen. And we heard, when I went back to this concept of trends, we heard that charting is something folks really, really need help with right now. And so, challenge accepted. Um, I'm going to tee up our demo that Raj has prepared for us, but some early feedback that we've got already about voice to chart. We've heard that having charts done before we walk out a door at the end of the day is amazing. Work stays at work. Our folks are getting their evenings back. People are really enjoying how quickly it is to create a SOAP note using voice to chart. Again, all this work getting done in work and giving you back some more time in your life. I'm actually going to jump to the demo just to jump right in, and then I can kind of give another overview.
Once you have access to voice to chart, getting started is easy. Simply click on the Smart SOAP template from the new chart entry dropdown. This template is an opinionated SOAP note that is a good starting point for you to help you save time. You can either record a session right in the browser or upload an audio file. Before you do either, make sure you get patient consent and click this checkbox to verify that you have done so. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to upload an audio file to save time. In this case, I'm uploading a 30-minute physio session of a recording between a patient and practitioner. Processing the file should just take a few minutes, and you can navigate away from this page. When your note is ready, you'll be notified. I'll pause the video now to save us some time. Great, the note is now generated. You can now edit it. In this case, we could not clearly identify any objective findings in the conversation, so we returned not enough information instead of guessing. You can review your note, fill in or correct any information. We include the audio file in the chart entry as a file attachment. It's useful if you would like to review your session, but you can delete it if you like. It's important to understand that all generative AI features can make mistakes, so ensure you review it thoroughly before signing it. To give our team feedback on the accuracy of the note, you can use these thumbs up and thumbs down buttons. Well, what if the note doesn't quite match what you're looking for? In this scenario, you can create your own smart template where you can describe in natural language the specifics of your note. To do so, navigate to your template section. Now, click on New Template, and let's give this template a name. Let's call it My Smart Template. Let's add a note, and let's call this SOAP, and let's click on this Voice to Chart button. In this prompt section here are the instructions that you want to give Jane. So just to make this a little faster, I'm going to click on our guide here, and I'm going to click on and copy and paste the example prompt so I can tweak it. I'm going to paste it here. And one thing I want to add to the objective section is something a little more detailed. So let me do that. I'm going to paste that in. And so we can read this in detail and we can tweak this however we like and iterate. And how we iterate on this and test it is you can use this playground. So I'm going to use this physiotherapy initial assessment, click generate. And just after a few seconds, I should be able to get a sense of if my note is working or not. So we can see now that we added the treatments provided in manual examination. So it looks like it took and it worked. I'll hit save. Since this is a template, I can add other parts to it. So let me add, another smart part, and let's call this a patient take home. I'll click the voice to chart button, and here I'm actually going to add a prompt that was shared by one of our practitioners from our beta. And he used this very detailed prompt to create a take-home document for his patient that was very clear and concise. So let's test this out. So we can see the summary of the session. It's very clear and empathetic. It breaks it down by what he is prompted for in the instructions. And so we're going to hit save. And just so in case you want to add just general notes, so these don't have to be smart, you can do that as well. So in this case, for my template, I'm going to add a section called just general notes. Now, let's try this out. Let's navigate back to our patient. Let's click on the chart. New chart entry. Now we can just find my smart template, which is here. And let's do the same thing. Let's just upload the audio file. And let's just see if this works. So I'm going to pause this again because this will take a few minutes. Great, we're back. And after a few minutes, it produced a note. And previously, our objective section under default note didn't contain any information. But now, because we've updated the prompt and the instructions, we can now see more detail in the objective section. And the patient take-home was generated, and this is something that can now be shared with the patient with very minimal effort from you. So to wrap up, you can get started fairly quickly with our default SOAP note. And Smart Templates offer a way to give detailed instructions to Jane to create all kinds of clinical documentation. And we do acknowledge that the Smart Templates, as is, can be intimidating, and we are actively designing ways to make the experience simpler and more intuitive. We're still quite early on, and we have some exciting things planned, including giving Jane's AI access to the patient's previous charts. And we believe that will simplify a common workflow of duplicating a chart entry. Now, you can just tell Jane what changed since the last visit and have it handle the busy work of creating a compliant chart note for the session. For back office automation, imagine if Jane could flag if your documentation was not in compliance with the insurance billing code you were claiming. What if it could suggest different billing codes that would help you maximize your insurance claims? What if it would automatically pull your availability in 2 weeks after hearing in your appointment about the next follow-up? Well, we hope you're excited about this journey, and we're excited to build this with you. Thank you for your time.
There's a couple of questions in the chat that I think would be nice to address right now, just because we're on the demo and there's a few questions. So I'm just going to read them out. Jess, you might have an answer, or Raj, excuse me, but I just think it might be worth, just since we did the demo. Yeah. So I'm just like one comment from Dan, and I think Jess, you'll probably echo this, but Dan said, in his experience, you must read the note before saving, as the AI adds things sometimes, like extra exercises, wrong diagnosis. So I'm just curious, Dr. Jess, from using this tool so far, how have you found that? How much editing have you done? Just like give us your experience from having actually used it.
Very good point, Dan. And I completely agree. When you use the standard prompts, then I've had to make a few modifications. But if you take the time to create your own prompt, make your own chart like Raj just showed in the demo, I really haven't had any problems with hallucinations. And hallucinations are a classic thing in LLMs. They do make things up. So 100% always review it, like no matter what. But in the last, I don't know, over 24 or so that I've done, because I'm very specific with the prompt, I haven't had any more hallucinations. So again, definitely redo it or review it, but you should be okay if you're very specific with your prompt.
All right. And then there was another question. Danielle asked, are you recording a full appointment conversation?
Yeah, happy to answer that one too. Yes, when I do it, and first off, I'll start by saying it's essential that you get permission, verbal permission from your patients. And I'm also putting that in my intake form that I'm getting written permission, just so I know there's clear consent that I will be recording the session. And yeah, you do record the entire session. And myself, I record the inquiry, and then I will record the objective part. So if I'm doing special tests, I'll just verbalize. I'll say, if I find pain on abduction of the left arm, I'll just verbalize it. Pain at 90 degrees of abduction of the left arm. I just say it out loud, and then it goes into the audio recording. And then that is very reliably put in my objective findings. And then if I have something else to do, usually what I'll do is I'll just pause the recording. I won't end it because I'm an acupuncturist. I'll put the needles in, and then I'll come out. I'll re-record, say, I use these needles. I'll pause it again. I'll go do the rest, give some home care, unpause it, say, here's what I did for my home care. And then I stop the session and it fills everything out. So you do record the entire session, yes. Long answer, but.
No, excellent, very helpful. And then Jill had a question, and Stephen said same as Jill. So Jill wrote, "It looks like the voice to chart focuses on more physical modalities, for example, physio, as opposed to more talk modalities such as counseling. Can you comment if it suits both or if that will be in the roadmap?" So I think Raj and Fiona, that's a great question for the two of you.
Yeah, I can take that one. So we built voice to chart in a way that's supposed to be is very generic, and that's why we built that smart templates feature. So we do actually have users in our beta right now that are mental health therapists, and they are using it. So it does support it. So again, back to the smart templates feature, you can use this to craft it for any discipline you are in, and you have to test it out a bit. And one thing I want to do plug is that we understand that it's kind of awkward to make that smart template. It can be time consuming, and we're actively working on improving that to make that simpler.
Excellent. And then I think this, oh, so you go ahead, Jess. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I did want to add something about that as well. In addition to acupuncture, I do hypnotherapy, and it has worked unbelievably well for those sessions as well once I create the proper prompt. So just to echo what Raj said, totally usable. And what's brilliant is it allows you to make it exactly what you need it to be.
And then I think this was shown in the demo, Raj, but I just want to confirm. So Nicola said they have very poor Wi-Fi and internet connections in parts of the clinic. So would it be possible to record on a device and then upload that when you have good internet access?
Yeah, absolutely. So I demonstrated the file upload. So that's meant to support that kind of thing. I'll give you an example. So with my wife is actually an occupational therapist, and she's running around a clinic chasing kids around. So she dictates after. So she does that right after her session. So I know for a fact that kind of works well, because if it doesn't, I get yelled at home.
Amazing. And then there was a question from Juliana. Are we able to use voice to chart with other languages as well?
At this moment, we don't support it, but we can look into that in our roadmap. It's possible it can work. I'm always surprised with how well AI does, but I wouldn't recommend it at this point.
Okay, and then last one, and we can move on. There's a couple questions about availability and price, and I know we're going to get to that in a little bit later in the session. So I'll just let everyone know that's asked those questions that's coming up, and I'll just do one last one. There was the question, and I think Olivia, probably Dr. Jess, you're the best person to answer this. So if you're recording a whole conversation, are you getting transcription of all the unrelated general conversation you have with a patient, like just the small talk, and how are you addressing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we all know, you get a lot of small talk. And what's fascinating is, again, with the right prompt, and this includes the ones that are already built into the standard smart chart, it filters all of that out. It really only takes the relevant information. Now, sometimes you will get some oddball stuff in there. So as we said before, definitely review the notes. But the vast majority of the time, it is shocking how specific it is at just extracting the relevant information from the session.
Perfect. Okay, that was great. Like I said, there's some other questions I know we're going to get to in a little bit of time. So thank you so much. And I will pass it back to you, Fiona.
I think there's a lot of things that we outside of the technology can start to look to support clinics in getting started, between creating examples of how to collect consent, examples of prompts. So we're happy to take that away and start pulling together some more educational and support resources as well for folks. And then, of course, a super important part of this, when is this available? Is this available? Is there additional cost? So as this is currently an experimental feature, we are going to be making it available to folks who request access over the next while. And we are going to make it available at a optional add-on. So it'll be $20 per user per month as an optional add-on. We are definitely going to be revisiting the pricing and packaging as we learn more. So as part of this experimental phase, we would love to hear all the feedback that you have in regards to that. And yeah, this is something that we're super eager to continue to evolve over the next while, and are absolutely open to that. So yeah, we've just spun up a little bit of a landing page. I will send that out after this session as well. You can scan the QR code as well. And yeah, we will start to make this available for folks who are interested over the next while. I'm going to answer Tim's questions as well. It's completely optional per user per month. So it's, say if you have 10 practitioners in your clinic and only one person feels like they would benefit from voice to chart, just that one person can try it as they please. So again, full agency, full optionality, and then we're going to continue to improve this over the next while as well.
Perfect. And then there's a couple questions that I think are maybe more specific or particular to people's accounts or their maybe specific discipline or specialty. Would we recommend that they reach out to our support team and then someone on our team can answer those in specific about like specific disciplines, being able to use it, or this one we can answer, but if they have specific questions about their own account, would the best direction be for them to email our support team and we can connect with them?
Yes, yeah, I think going through our support team is best for now. And then even providing feedback to the support team on what types of sessions would be helpful. If there's kind of discipline-specific resources you'd love from us, we can definitely start to tee those up for folks to make sure that we're on this journey of having technology and then learning how to use the technology together as well.
Perfect. And then I think just to wrap it up, there's two questions in the sort of privacy and security, PHIPA, HIPAA, PIPEDA, excuse me, compliance. How can people know more about that? How do they know which models we're using? Where can we find more details about that?
Yeah, so currently we do have I'll let Raj hop in as well, but currently we do have a lightweight guide available to folks. But if there's an appetite to have lots of security specifics in there, we can definitely flesh out an FAQ with some of those details. But I'll let Raj kind of maybe jump in with some of the need to know elements there, if that sounds good.
Yeah, so we use an enterprise version of ChatGPT, which is hosted by Microsoft Azure. And we're specifically doing that because we can sign a BAA agreement with them. So we're ensuring that it's all safe across the whole line. On top of that, what we're also experimenting in is using Claude, which is another model by Anthropic, which is also very safe. But the benefit of this is it's hosted on the same infrastructure, Amazon Web Services, as the rest of Jane. So the reason why we're pursuing this is that the data is just staying in one cloud. Although it's all safe, this is going to make it a lot simpler and a lot more secure for our liking.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, as we wrap up, Jess, any last words from you? Any last words of advice for people trying to try out AI for the first time?
That I'm sure the people watching and listening have identified. I'm really passionate about this type of stuff. So I'm completely available for questions. If you have any questions or curiosities on everything that I've been doing with it and how you can make your life easier, send me an email. I'll just put it in the chat. And I'm happy to answer absolutely any questions whatsoever.
I just also wanted to remind everyone about our friendly support team. So you get unlimited support, phone, email, chat, live support, even when you need it on Saturdays. So if you have any questions about anything, you can always contact our team. It takes about 2 minutes to get through on the phone, and we aim to reply to all emails as fast as possible. But we also have, next slide, our community. So if you are not yet a part of it, I highly recommend. It's a great place to connect with other practitioners, and other people working in the health and wellness space to ask questions about topics just like this, asking about AI, how people are using it in their clinics, sharing tips and tricks and tools. It's not just about Jane topics. It can be really about anything about opening, running, and growing your practice. So we would love to see you there. We have the main community, and then we have a US billing community as well. And I see that the links are there in the chat as well. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. I know how busy you all are. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. We'll be sending around the recording as well as any links that were mentioned in today's session, link to the early access page, the demo that Raj created for us, as well as some of the recommendations from Dr. Jess, as well as some of the ones from the chat as well, perhaps. So that is it for us. Thank you so much for giving us 47 minutes of your time today. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you at another session again soon. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your Thursday.